Hello everybody and welcome to the 5 Nights at Freddy's Fangames Iceberg Explained. I promised I would do a video about it one day and that day has finally come. This time around I'll be covering this particular iceberg, which was conceived and written in Spanish by Twitter user Team Lancome, but was translated to English by Kane. It's the same rules as before. I have a usage meter in the corner to show you how sure I am of the things I'm saying. If it's not filled, that means I have no clue what I'm talking about, and if it's completely filled, that means I'm really sure of what I'm talking about. Okay, you saw that? Yeah, it's the exact same thing. You probably get it by now. Anyways, one last thing. These entries have been removed from the iceberg as they're not really too related to FNaF and are mostly about things from the Spanish community. Here's a few explanations in case you're curious, but that's all I'm gonna say about them as I want to focus on the English FNaF community in this video. So, with that said, let's begin! The fazbear fanverse. The fazbear fanverse is an initiative by Scott Cawthon to make FNaF fan games official in a way. It's given developers extra money and rights to make ports of their fan games to consoles and mobile, as well as merch, possibly. The first batch of fan games from this initiative are FNac 4, popgoes Evergreen, flumpty 3, the Joy of Creation Ignited Collection, and FNaF Plus. So let's talk about some of these games for a second. Popgoes Evergreen. Popgoes Evergreen is a remastered version of the very popular fan game Popgoes, which was released in 2016. This remastered version includes new models, a larger storyline, whatever the hell this is, and just a lot of improvements from the original. One Night at Flumpty's 3. One Night at Flumpty's 3 is the third entry on the onaf saga, created by Jonachrome. There were plans to make a third game back in 2015 titled 1 Week at Flumpty's, but it ended up getting cancelled due to lack of motivation. FNac 4. This one is the fourth entry in the 5 Nights at Candy saga, created by Emil. This game began its development even before the fazbear fanverse initiative started, and we don't really know much about it besides a couple teasers and vague game jolt updates. It looks fucking awesome though, I have to give it that. FNaF Plus. Five Nights at Freddy's Plus is a remastered and improved version of the original FNaF, created by Fiznom. It features a lot of changes, different graphics, different aesthetic, different everything really. Fiznom released a couple of VHS tape trailers, Squimpo style, and they are honestly incredible, especially stage performance, that one haunted me for days. Also, this game serves as a replacement for FNaF Open Source. And what is FNaF Open Source? Well, let me tell you. FNaF OS. FNaF Open Source was another Fiznom fan game, basically a remastered version of FNaF 2, but apparently Scott Cawthon decided to take it down, since he felt the game was in a grey area between fangame and copy. A few emails later, they decided to make FNaF Plus and start the whole fazbear fanverse initiative. And the rest is history. The FNaF Show. This is a podcast type series created by tjoc. Oh my god! Oh my god! Oh no! Where he interviews various voice actors and FNaF related people, such as Heather Masters, Callum Goff, MadPat, Nikson, and Amber Lee Connors. Yeah, popgoes reprinted. Before Evergreen, there was another attempt at remastering popgoes, but this one got cancelled, like a lot of other popgoes projects. I gotta say though, this one didn't seem nearly as ambitious as Evergreen, so I'm glad we're getting that one instead. tnar 2 Reloaded. Those Nights at Rachel's 2 Reloaded is a troll game released by Nikson. It's meant to be a sequel to the first Rachel's game, but it's actually a first-person shooter where you have to kill the animatronics. And that's very badass. nsfw. That word stands for not safe for work, and let me tell you, there's a lot of FNaF fan-made stuff that falls under that category. I don't want to talk about it too much because the implications of FNaF Rule 34 are ew, but I'll just say it's out there if you want to see it. Gender of sex strings. And no, I don't mean sex strings, I mean this. Spoiler warning for popgoes, but in the end of the game, it is revealed that you've been playing as a red robot fucker called Sex Strings. This character is a male, since in the character's memory card, Sex Strings is referred to as a he. But still, this thing is a weird androgynous machine. I don't think its gender really matters all that much in the grand scheme of things. FNIA. 5 Nights in Anime is an insanely horny fan game created by the YouTuber Mayorusu. It's basically a copy of FNaF 1 but with naked anime waifus who try to kill you using their breasts. There was also a sequel, fnia 2, and that was even worse. Kane and Emil friendship. Kane Carter and Emil Mako are the creators of Popgoes and Five Nights at Candy's respectively, and they're good buddies. They've even worked on projects together such as Chef Wanted and even Evergreen. Fangames at Freddit. This was basically a game jam in the FNaF Reddit. The rewards for winning the jam would be a special flare on the subreddit, 2 months of advertising and a couple Steam games. There were a few cool fan games that came out of this, and my personal favorite is Freddy Pizzeria by Fesnam. Theories of fan games being canon to FNaF. This tended to happen a lot in the earlier days of the FNaF community. There's for sure a couple of fan games which happen in the same timeline and universe, like Candies for example, but they're self-contained stories that don't really affect the FNaF lore. And that's about it. A plan to expose / cancel Kane Carter and Nikson. I don't think there was actually a plan to do it, but these two have run into a few problems before. Nikson has said some controversial and transphobic stuff in the past, but that's about it for him. Meanwhile, Kane has apparently done some slightly racist remarks which got him cancelled for like a day or something, but it was so dumb that everyone forgot about it. In my opinion, the Nikson stuff is way worse anyway. So, in other words, trans rights, man. FNaF Welcome to Freddyland. Welcome to Freddyland was a fan game created by Marco Antonio, inspired by the fake Freddyland teaser I mentioned in my original FNaF Iceberg video. It's a rather interesting concept, but sadly it seems like it got cancelled a little while ago. Somebody should take this idea and run with it. It has a lot of potential. Hispanic Sinister Turmoil. Sinister Turmoil was a very special fan game created in Unity by UHQ Games, but it got so ambitious that it fell apart after a couple of months of development. But in 2020, somebody called Yana Saw Your Friend YouTube decided to remaster the game in its entirety, and it's pretty horrible. Ugly graphics, unoriginal gameplay. There's even a reference to a YouTuber that got outed as a pedophile recently. So if you wanna play a trashy version of a cancelled fan game, play this Hispanic Sinister Turmoil thingy. Popgoes Finale. Popgoes Finale is yet another cancelled Popgoes project. This one began development in 2019 and was meant to be the great finale to the Popgoes series before Evergreen and Arcade 2020 came around. And even though it was cancelled, we got a soundtrack release and also a quick demo of the game, which is pretty nice. Popgoes Encore. I'm getting kinda sick of talking about Popgoes at this point, but whatever. Popgoes Encore was yet another sequel planned for Popgoes, and it was put together before the first game was even finished, but it never got past the sketches and ideas phase. It looked very dope though, especially the Bonnie X design. 1 week at Flumpty's. As I mentioned before, 1 week at Flumpty's was meant to be the third game of the Flumpty saga, but it got cancelled back in 2015. And ever since then it's been remastered and revived by a lot of fans. The game seemed to be a little too messy and complicated to develop, which can be seen in a couple of the updates that Jonochrome made for his YouTube channel, and that would lead to its eventual cancellation. Old versions of tjoc. There are indeed a couple old versions of the Joy of Creation, the Unreal Engine fan game by Nikson, which don't look nearly as good as the final version of the game, but they're still a little interesting. One of the older versions of the game was played by my sugar daddy Markiplier, if you want to check that out. And talking about Markiplier, animatronics of Markiplier and Scribblenetty in fnac. Markiplier is an Easter egg in the first Candies game. You simply have to click a drawing of him and he will show up in your office. About Scribblenetty, you can find her character in Candies too by clicking another poster in the cameras. I wouldn't say these Easter eggs have any implications on the lore of the games, but still. Blackrabbit is Shadow Bunny. Blackrabbit is the main antagonist in Popgoes, and yeah, they're pretty similar to Shadow Bunny, and it's definitely not a coincidence, considering the lore of the game. The animatronics basically build Blackrabbit out of various 3D printed parts. Mary is related to Mike Smith. Mary is the protagonist of the Five Nights at Candy saga, and wanna know what her surname is? Yeah, you guessed it, Smith! Plus, as I mentioned before, Candies actually takes place in the FNaF universe, so Mike and Mary are related for sure. Five Nights at Sonic's. This is one of the earliest examples of a fan game I could find, and they're pretty cute for what they are. Basically just recreations of the first FNaF games, but with Sonic the Hedgehog characters. Not much else to say. Doko and Popgoes in fnac Remastered. If you happen to click the camera 11 drawing that says oof, a Doco puppet will appear in the office. And sometimes, on camera 8, one of the arcade machines can turn into a popgoes machine, allegedly. I actually don't have any proof about the second one. I just wasn't able to find anything more than a little paragraph about it in the Candies wiki, but it sounds like it could definitely be a thing. popgoes 2016 and popgoes 2 2016 version. At first, I thought this was a callback to the entry about popgoes Encore, but not really. There was yet another game called popgoes 2 planned in 2016, but it got cancelled as you could imagine. And popgoes 2016 simply refers to the original version of the game, which got renamed to popgoes 2016 when Evergreen got announced, as to avoid any confusion. Bootleg merch of Five Nights at Candy's. Yep, this indeed happened, and it's just as bad as you'd expect. I mean, it happens to every game under the sun. This was bound to happen eventually. But hey, since Scott is promising official merch with the fazbear fanverse initiative, we might see a decrease in bootleg stuff now. Who really knows? Phantom Candy and Nightmare Candy in FNac 3. These were rumor characters that were apparently gonna show up as enemies in Candies 3, but never did. Phantom Candy didn't even appear until Candies Remastered, and Nightmare Candy was just made for fun, though he appears on this thank you image that LMAO made. Weekend. Weekend was a pretty popular fan game created by Galba in 2016. I wasn't a big fan of it because it seemed pretty standard for a fan game of that era, but still it had a couple nice ideas. It was eventually cancelled though, like a lot of other fan games. There's been talk of a reimagined version called Weekend Retribution, but I haven't heard much about it. popgoes X Candy is canon. Guess what? It's true! It is indeed canon, and what I mean by that is, the games have been confirmed to take place in the same universe by Emil and Kane, so in a way, popgoes X Candy is canon and real. And it's not the last time these two games will cross paths. The fan game removed by a fast food chain due to it affecting their image. This is clearly talking about Jollibees, which I'm pretty sure has been the only fan game that has gotten a copyright notice that wasn't from Scott himself. This game was inspired by the fast food chain Jollibees, as you could tell from the title. And it's honestly a shame that it happened, but can you really blame the company? When you search Jollibees, some of the first results are from the game, which is not the best look for a kid-friendly business. And as far as I'm aware, this is the only time that something like this has happened. Morse the Mole. Morse was a scrapped tjoc animatronic for popgoes. In the extras menu you can see him shooting lasers out of his arms, which is really epic, but it doesn't really fit with the aesthetic of the game whatsoever. There's been a couple of rumors of a possible return of Morse, but they're pretty much just a bunch of jokes. PNM is the creator of the original fnac. This one is pretty much just a conspiracy theory. Five Nights at Treasure Island was created in 2014 by Matthew Phoenix Rodriguez, who ended up cancelling the game in 2015 and giving the ideas and concepts to somebody called Photo Negative Mickey, who would eventually finish the game in 2019 with a lot of different revivals and remastered versions. What this theory suggests is that none of this is real and Matthew just stole the idea from Photo Negative Mickey, which doesn't sound true to me at all, but I'll let you be the judge. Legal issues and drama surrounding Philmorg, or Fisnum. There's been a lot of drama around Phil for sure. He's known for cancelling a lot of his games and things like that, and being a bit of a douchebag to the community. He even blocked me after I told him to shut the fuck up over some dumb tweets. Aside from that, he doesn't have much in the way of legal issues, I think, but maybe it's referring to the FNaF open source fiasco I mentioned before, and not much else. TRTF 5. The Return to Freddy's 5 was one of the most hyped fun games of all time, I would say, and I was there when it was still happening. First, it was called The Return to Freddy's Remastered, then it was rebooted, and then it was just TRTF 5. And then the creator, PFP Films, decided to change the game to The Road That Falls and go into a completely different direction with a new story that has nothing to do with FNaF apparently, and I'm pretty sure nothing came out of it. To me, the game is most likely cancelled at this point. popgoes Silent Night. Silent Night was a cancelled popgoes DLC which would include a 7th additional night to the game. The goal in this night was to literally kill yourself before Gravestone, one of the enemies of the game, could do it first. I believe it would have been too controversial and brutal to include something like this in such an innocent looking fun game, so that's probably why it got cancelled, but I'm not really sure. The Tune. The Tune, or Five Nights at Treasure Island The Tune, is a very obscure fan game that almost became lost media. The original download for the game was deleted and only a re-upload with 46 views remains on a channel called FNaF Fangame Reuploads. This particular game focused mostly on the Suicide Mouse creepypasta and it's quite similar to Treasure Island. It's not too special, but it's definitely interesting in its own right. I'll leave the game in the description if you want to play it. The onaf 3 by Kane Carter and Phil Morg. These two worked on a fan-made recreation of onaf 3 long after the actual game got cancelled by Genochrome, and you can see concepts of what this fan-made recreation was gonna look like in a tweet by Kane Carter. And it's really well done and fleshed out, so kudos to these two. Mods for fnac are. Indeed, there's a couple mods for Candy's Remastered, but not a ton of them or anything, just a couple. It happens with pretty much every FNAF game because they're really easy to make mods for, which is why I made one 5 years ago and it's my most viewed video ever. There's not really much to say about this one. Those Nights at Rachel's 2 Original. Nikson actually had plans to make a sequel to Rachel's, and I'm not talking about the first-person shooter, I mean an actual FNAF-like continuation. But of course, it got cancelled after a couple months of development. It's like you have to cancel at least one game to be a proper fan game developer. popgoes 2, Dia de los Muertos DLC. popgoes 2, The Dead Forest, was gonna include an extra DLC inspired by Mexican culture, especially El Dia de los Muertos. Kane posted a couple of the models and they looked pretty nice. It would be kinda cool if they ended up including something like this in Evergreen. Old versions of Dormitavis. Dormitavis was developed for a very long time, so there's probably a lot of old versions of the game with various changes. I have literally never played this one before though, because it has like 30 million nights and it seems like a chore to get through, so I'm not really familiar with it too much, but it seems pretty ambitious. TRTF, Ratzla, and Frankbirds. These two were spin-offs from the Return to Freddy saga, and they both began their development during the creation of the Return to Freddy's 5. Not much is known about these two games, but we'll be talking about one of them in a later entry, so stay tuned. FNAF 3 Fan-Made. I talked about this one in my original FNAF Iceberg video, and you probably seen that one, but I'll explain it anyway. FNAF 3 Fan-Made was, obviously enough, a fan game that was a fusion of the first and the second game, and it went over pretty well in my opinion. It's hella creative even though it lacks original visuals, but Scott got a little upset at the game being called FNAF 3, so the game's title got changed to The Return to Freddy's, and the rest is history. The HS fan game series. I mentioned this in the previous video too, but there was a web show in the Spanish FNAF community called FNAF HS, which stands for Five Nights at Freddy's High School. It was pretty popular over here, and it eventually spawned a couple different high school shows, such as Five Nights at Candy's High School, for example. Little Green Cardboard Cutouts. This is the first entry that has given me no results. I have absolutely no idea what this could be. I'm okay with the idea of doing another Iceberg corrections video if any of you happen to know what this is. The only thing that comes to mind is the origami cat from Candy's, but that's blue, not green, so I really don't know at this point. Lore of Dormitavis. As far as I'm aware, you play as Purple Guy, who in this storyline is named Garby, after burning to death and going to hell for killing a bunch of children at Cakebear's family diner. There's a few more details sprinkled in through the game, but we'll leave those for some later entries in the Iceberg. The official Nightmare Before Disney and its older versions. This entry is referring to Nightmare Before Disney, a spin-off of the Treasure Island game. And god, the timeline of releases for this game is all over the goddamn place, but as far as I'm aware, the first true playable build was released on September of 2016, and it was created by Subwoofer X3, who was also known for making the game Five Nights to Remember, which is also a pretty decent game. The jumpscare sound used in Jollibee's Phase 2. This particular jumpscare sound is actually one of the scariest I've heard. It's just a very distorted shriek with a creepy echo. And what makes it spookier is that I genuinely couldn't find the original source for it. If you have any info about it, please tell me, because I really want to know where this super disturbing scream originates from. I'm not even gonna try to pronounce those, but I promise it will all make sense after I explain it. All of these are teaser games released for various entries in the Treasure Island saga. The second one, for example, is called The Button Machine Hides Codes, and the third one is called This Gives Some Extra Enlightenment. I couldn't find what the first and fourth ones mean, though their true names have been lost to time as far as I'm aware. All of these are basically machines that you can punch codes into to get access to teaser images and extra content, which is actually a pretty cool concept in my opinion. Images of Monster Rat without any eyes. In the game files for Candies 3, there are some very creepy pictures of Monster Rat with no eyes, as well as a couple of pictures labeled as See No Evil, Hear No Evil, and Say No Evil. There's also a render of a white monster rat, which is probably the most disturbing part of this whole thing. Maybe these went unused, maybe they're rare screens akin to the ones in the original FNaF games. I don't really know for sure, and that makes it way scarier. Five Nights at Freddy's Day Shift. So this one is pretty damn interesting, even though I could find very little info about it. Day Shift is an HTML fan game that has taken, no joke, more than 5 years to develop, and thus given it the title of the fan game that has been in development for the longest time. And it's not even finished yet. A very early demo of the game got released last year, and it's the last news we've gotten about it. So basically expect our full release around 2027 or something. FNaF Dark Space. Dark Space is a fan game that takes place in, get this, space. In this universe, a mysterious company called CLBT created a spaceship to evacuate all humans after the planet went to shit due to all the pollution and global warming. Fazbear Entertainment decides to make a restaurant in this massive spaceship, with new animatronics, new shows, and 100% more fun. The game is currently being done with Unreal Engine, and it seems pretty ambitious just based on the insane concept alone. And it's coming out this year, apparently. FNac World Adventure. It's pretty obvious based on the title alone, but yes, this is a Five Nights at Candy's inspired world game. This one is pretty damn cute, but it's been cancelled and archived on GameChill. It seemed to have a lot of potential, but it seems like the developers just lost interest with it, which is very sad. Glitch, Simon, and Benny Glade. I really had to dig into Kane Carter's Twitter account to find an explanation for this one, but it's pretty solid. So, in popgoes, there are two characters named Simon and Bonnie Glade. This theory suggests that there's a correlation between these two and Glitch, Trap, and Benny from the actual FNaF series. I'm not 100% sure as to how these four characters tie into their respective stories, but it's interesting to think they could have inspired Scott himself to add the Glitch, Trap, and Benny dynamic to the FNaF lore. And now that we're talking about Bonnie Glade, the history of Bonnie Glade and the origin of the blackrabbit. I'm far from an expert when it comes to FNaF fangame lore, but this section of the story is quite easy to explain. You see, in the popgoes series, Bonnie is a young girl and the daughter of Fritz Glade. In this timeline, Fritz was the victim of the bite of 87, which was caused by Toy Bonnie, so he named his child Bonnie as a way to cope with the trauma. And one day, Bonnie gets brutally murdered by her own father, suffering from a severe PTSD episode, after showing up with a Toy Bonnie mask on her head. Fritz would use an axe to do this, explaining why Toy Bonnie always appears with a huge hole in the middle of her head in popgoes. Bonnie didn't survive this attack, and would pass away and later possess a blackrabbit, the main antagonist in the popgoes series. Drama between Kane Carter and BizzoNet. So BizzoNet is a pretty popular artist known for making some banging explicit art, which makes me want to act up. I know they drew some popgoes art once, but that's all I could really find. I think this might have been the source of this alleged drama, but I can't find any info about it online besides that. The entire lore of TRTF. I don't know if this is talking about the lore of the game or the internal drama and story surrounding it, and both are super large topics that it would take documentary-sized videos to explain. If you want to learn about the actual story of the game, you can read the TRTF book, which, yes, is a real thing, and it's called The Dreadful Truth. I'll leave a link in the description. And if you want to discover all the drama and history behind the development of the game, you can subscribe, like this video, and join my free gift cards giveaway, and maybe I'll explain it in an extra episode or something. Yeah, The Human Expo. The Human Expo was an interview podcast by Kane Carter, where he would interview various FNAF related people. Pretty much just the FNAF show, but with a different British dude speaking. A lot of the interviews have been unlisted or lost to time because they didn't really become as popular as Kane expected, but a few examples of people interviewed were Emil, The Living Tombstone, Smashing Renders, and Chris Rodriguez. Also, there were plans for an Ivan G interview too, but that never materialized. Bore and tickle fetish of fnac and popgoes. Okay, okay, that's enough. Okay. Nah, but there's actually some of it. It's garbage as you'd expect, and I don't know how somebody could get up to something like this, but it's definitely a thing. And I found this rabbit hole of gross SFM art, which had me rolling on the floor but also dying on the inside at the same time. So, now that we talked about the dumbest entry on the iceberg, let's talk about one of the more serious ones. So, here's a fair warning though, this one contains very insensitive and triggering topics that you may want to avoid, so proceed with caution. The rat actor would have abused Mary if the puppeteer didn't arrive in time. In the ending of Candy's 3, a very gruesome incident takes place. Mary hides in a closet while playing hide and seek with a rat, then the puppeteer, Benny, arrives to the scene and bloody shenanigans ensue. This event traumatizes Mary and is the reason why she has so many nightmares through the game. This theory is very far-fetched, but not really at the same time, because the rat does seem to have a very weird relationship with Mary, a certain hyperfixation shown through the minigames, which is kinda unsettling to consider, so it's food for thought, I guess. You look inside the well. You should be able to figure this one out by yourself if you've been paying attention, but I'll explain it either way. If you go to this well in popgoes Arcade 2016, you will find a couple coins, but if you keep spamming for a while, you look inside the well and find the necks floating in the water. Now it's your turn to put all the pieces together in your head. Dormitabus reboot. It's true, Dormitabus was gonna get a reboot eventually, but it got cancelled for reasons I'll get to in a later entry. It gets really disturbing, and it's not the last time we'll talk about it. William Afton is a pedophile. This is a comic by Pinky Pills, one of the official FNAF artists, where William is seen being a little too infatuated with a child. It's definitely disturbing, but I wouldn't say it's canon. I mean, there's nothing sexual about it, it's simply a little spooky and gross, but that's about it. Also, it's absolutely unrelated, but did you know that Pinky Pills is pregnant? Isn't that cool? popgoes subtle love interest. Excuse me? I don't think there's a love interest in popgoes. Listen, this iceberg doesn't seem to have a lot of memes or dumb stuff, so I highly doubt this is just here to throw some people off. It's gotta be here for something, but I just don't know what it means, man. Do you? Frankfurt was gonna take place in a brothel. Finally, we get to talk about Frankfurt again. And yes, it's true, the concept of the game was inspired by the adult theory from Sister Location, and the game was indeed gonna take place in a brothel called Frankfurt. This teaser, for example, says that a more mature audience is coming to town. And the animatronics are meant to be, more lustful and literal robot strippers. The game was cancelled, thankfully. FNac 4 fan-made. I can confirm that there's indeed been a million fan-made recreations for Kenny's 4. The game has been in development for years now, so of course some fans decided to make their own versions in the meanwhile. The most famous one is a very short troll game though, and many of these fan-made interpretations have been cancelled actually. But still, I guess it's an interesting side effect of having to wait so long for a game, and having such a creative community. The Stalker of the Radiance team. Radiance team is a game development group that has worked on various Treasure Island remasters, and I couldn't find any sort of info on a Stalker. I've seen that they locked the shouts section in their game jolt for a couple years, but I don't think that has anything to do with this. They could have deleted previous comments or something like that, but I don't really know for sure. It doesn't seem too real to me. Drug dealer Kane Carter. This is an old tweet from Kane in which he tells us that upon searching his own name on Google, he found there was another person called Kane Carter who was sentenced to 3 years in prison for drug offenses. It's just very dumb and silly. Also, I'm pretty sure the drug dealer Kane, the one who was behind bars, has left prison by now, so I wonder how he's doing. Project Fusion. Also known as the Cursed Metal, this was yet another cancelled fan game. This one didn't seem that good in my opinion, because it's a little too messy and shiny and weird. The game itself was cancelled because apparently the team that was working on it, Funtime Games, quote unquote died, and I would say it was caused by some internal drama from what I've heard. I don't have much else to say about this one really. Candy X Cindy and Moises87. Moises87 is an infamous Mexican artist known for making ship art depicting Candy and Cindy from FNac. It started out kinda cute and innocent, but then oh no! Yeah, things took a dark turn really quickly. But it seems like he's a normal, non-fetishy artist now, so I'm glad he's doing better. Lost and deleted fanfiction and one-shots. I mean, I could definitely see this being a thing, just a bunch of horny young people writing fanfiction and one-shots, and then regretting them enough to delete them forever, thus making lost media that I'm sure nobody's on the hunt for. I don't know if this entry is referring to a specific one though. MBD2. There were apparently plans to make a sequel to Nightmare Before Disney, but I don't think it ever materialized, aside from a troll game released on April Fools. The creator, Subwoofer, actually made a fake trailer that looks so good, it was pretty believable. Honestly, I just want him to make the game for real because that one troll trailer looked way too cool for its own good. Five Nights at Fnac. This one was yet another cancelled fan game, mostly inspired by FNaF 2. It never got past the demo phase, sadly enough. The last known version of Fnac was released on June of 2015. Fina BIG, the creator of the game, had a few issues on her computer and had to delete everything. Her last ever DeviantArt post was on April 21st of 2016. Exactly 5 years to the upload of this video. But let's talk about the game for a second. This little demo really seemed to catch on, and even though it was cancelled and discontinued, there's apparently still some people who care about it enough to make their own remakes. But I wouldn't be surprised if these remakes end up getting cancelled too, though. This game is definitely a relic of the past in a lot of ways. Development of the official FNac. Okay, listen, this is yet another topic that has so many goddamn points and info that researching the entire thing would take a lot of weeks. And there's so many people involved in the creation of this game that telling you all an abridged version of the development story doesn't feel right to me either. The game has changed hands, been through various developer teams, has been remastered hundreds of times with varying results, has been cancelled and uncancelled, leaked, released in beta, demo and alpha states. There's just so many things at play with this particular fan game, it's insane. I'm being honest, it's not as interesting as you'd expect. It's the only time I'm gonna be saying that really. I want y'all to do your homework and read about this one yourself if you're curious. Beta designs of popgoes. Popgoes is a game that went through a lot of changes, especially when it comes to design choices. Kane got the task of designing mock-up edits of the characters for reference art, and he did it. For example, this was the result for popgoes, and this was the result for Stone. I know they're kinda dumb, but it was just proof of concept. One-shots of Kane x Emil. I didn't want to skip this one because it sounds strangely familiar for some reason. It rings a bell. It's weird, and in a way I hope it's not true because fanfiction between real people is gross, but who really knows? Fan games removed by Nintendo. This is something that has happened only once as far as I'm aware, with the game Five Nights at Nintendo Land. Nintendo, being the horrible crybabies that they are, took the game down and probably ruined the hopes and dreams of a very young creator. I know I said Jolly was the only one who got a copyright notice, but that's different because it was a food company, not Nintendo of all things. Also, since we're talking about Nintendo, I don't want this to happen, but how come this company hasn't taken down Five Nights at Wario's yet? Maybe it's because it doesn't have, their name in the title, but it's still their characters and stuff. I hope this isn't a bad omen or anything. Add the original Matt. The original Matt is a GameJolt user who specializes in mods for Ultimate Custom Night. They aren't really too remarkable, as I mentioned before, anyone can make mods for FNaF games, but it's a little interesting, I suppose. Popgoes F/0. Popgoes 0, also known as Popgoes F, was a cancelled fan game created by Fillmore. It was revealed in the ending of Popgoes Arcade 2 upon brightening the image. Not much is known about this game, only that it was gonna take place right before Popgoes 2 and would include something called generated animatronics. Here's generated Popgoes, for example. Lore of Those Nights at Rachel's. Rachel's takes place in Dukes and Rachel's, which is the rival company of Freddy Fazbear in this universe. Apparently, these shady bitches stole some endoskeletons from Freddy's, and now the animatronics are suffering weird malfunctions. I wonder why. Maybe they have a remnant soul juice from a decade ago or something. And as the nights progress, we learn that even the dude giving us phone calls through the game has been shady as hell, as they just lied and invented a bunch of things on the fly to confuse you and scare you even further, so you wouldn't find out about their unethical practices. Popgoes History. Apparently, Popgoes Arcade 2 was gonna be a crossover between Popgoes and Five Nights at Candy's. It was gonna be called History, a mix of history and mystery. That's why I said that these games were gonna cross paths eventually, earlier in the Iceberg. Tyler Ostrom. Tyler, also known as BFP Films, is the main creator behind the TRTF saga, and this man is the Christian of the FNAF community, I tell you. From lying about his girlfriend being his sister, to faking his own suicide during the Return to Freddy's 4, to supporting Trump, to making very bad decisions when it comes to making games, then trying to invest on his own licensed company and an attempt to work at PlayStation? This dude deserves an iceberg of his own. I could talk about this little bro for hours on end. So maybe I will someday. The Tabbyland Trilogy. This was a pretty popular fangame series created by Crytolius in 2015. She had plans to make a sort of remastered trilogy thingy, but not much came out of it. She's given up on game development entirely, abandoning the series and her previous username entirely. Now she goes by Clicky in a new account. There's also an unofficial remastered version of this trilogy thing I was talking about, and it's pretty funky. Definitely a lot more high quality than the original saga, if I say so myself. Whiteface. Whiteface is a scrapped Easter egg in Popgoes, which is meant to be a physical representation of Fred's Glade. And dude, it's so goddamn unsettling. It looks like a low resolution, grainy ass picture of a mannequin or something. Like it's clearly an edited photo of that, but the fact that there's basically no info about this thing at all, not even in the extras menu of Popgoes where it appears, makes it super strange and weird and obscure. Crazy Kid. This is yet another scary face hidden in a fangame. This one shows up on Tyke and Sons Lumber Co., which is a pretty dope fangame which mixes Pizzeria Simulator and Chipper and Sons Lumber Co., a game Scott Cawthon made before FNAF was even a thing. If you stay away from the keyboard for long enough, this horrible screaming face will appear on your screen and crash your game afterwards. The creator of the game ended up releasing a side project inspired by the Crazy Kid face alone. It's a very weird, obscure little game, which is pretty badass actually. Also, fun fact, well, maybe not a fun fact, but it's still a fact. When you lose in the game, this is what happens. I don't even want to know where this one comes from. Holy shit. FNac 3 takes place in Monsters Inc. Pretty much just a joke theory, but it makes sense, right? After all, FNac 3 contains monsters coming out of doors to hunt children. Isn't that basically the plot of Monsters Inc? The Sounds and the Piggy fangames. I'm not a huge Roblox fan, but Piggy is basically a sorta creepy-ish game inside of Roblox. The thing is, a few of the jump scare noises are taken directly from FNAF fangames, and the most recognizable is the Five Nights at Treasure Island one. You know, the one that goes yeah. It's important to note that most of these noises and screams are taken from royalty-free websites and places like that, so it's not really too far-fetched to consider that this could have been just a coincidence. The popgoes Patreon page. It's pretty self-explanatory really, but it's true. Popgoes had a Patreon page where you could get monthly content and different rewards, such as promotion, custom voice messages, development pictures, cancelled images, and wallpapers. The idea of having a Patreon page for the game nowadays seems a little old at this point. After all, we have the fazbear fanverse, and the people who make these really huge fan games are gonna get them monetized now, so they don't really need a Patreon anymore. Nichi/blackout. Again, we are gonna talk about triggering topics. Not only on this entry, but on the last ones too. This is something I've been wanting to talk about for a while now, and only now I have the chance to. This blackout dude has so many awful allegations to his name. He's been called a literal necrophile and even confirmed to be a pedophile by his own voice acting team for the game, which led to the cancellation of the Dormitabus reboot. And this dude has actually talked to me in the past in various insanely min-spirited tweets on his old Twitter account, and has apparently been terrible with other people in his community as well, like calling people slurs and wanting to gas the Jews. So this dude is like Fiznum but a million times worse and actually dangerous. So all around a shitty edgy person. And guess what? Let's talk about Dormitabus, his dumb FNaF fan game. There's something I've been hiding from you, a big part of the story I didn't want to bring up on earlier entries. You see, Garvey, the purple man on this game, is a literal pedophile. Seriously, I'm not making that up. There's audio logs in the game that depict it. Now that you have that info, it's impossible not to see Garvey as a creepy reflection of its own creator in a way, which makes it all the more scarier in my opinion. Spider animatronic and Jacksepticeye in FNac 2. During the development of Candies 2, apparently there was somebody over at DeviantArt claiming to be Emil and saying that there was gonna be a Jacksepticeye animatronic and a Spider one too. This was back in the day when making bold claims without backing them up was very common in the community. It got so bad that Emil himself made a post about it on his Tumblr page, explaining that he makes games by himself and doesn't leak anything, and thus killing the rumor quickly. Freddy, Room Zero, and Curse 6 Flags. These two are fan games created by Marco Games, which we have barely any info about. Six Flags was gonna come out in 2015, it didn't, and Room Zero was gonna come out in 2017. It didn't. The creator hasn't given us any sort of update since then and has deleted all of his videos from his YouTube channel, including trailers and teasers. Cyanide and R2124. 2124 was a very small, private subreddit designed for high-quality content related to FNaF. It's known for being the origin of popgoes, as a lot of individuals from the subreddit decided to come together and make it happen. And the dudes behind the Reddit also wanted to create a mascot for the site. They made him a blue bear of all things and started a poll to decide his name. Cyanide would be it. As a reference to the subreddit, Cyanide appears on the popgoes custom night if you put the code 2124. Mobile game with images of real missing people. Okay, the first time I saw this, I literally got chills. Now imagine my face when I discovered it's real. Now listen, as far as I know, nobody has ever gone as far as to kill somebody in real life to put it in a fan game, but some have gone to horrible extremes for realism's sake. This entry is referring to a very popular video by Animatronic, where she plays trashy FNaF bootleg games. But in between a lot of shitty and not so shitty funny ones, we get one called 5 Nights at a Haunted House. And it starts up like this. The first missing person is Suzanne Bombardier, who was kidnapped, abused and murdered in the 1980s. She was 14 years old. And the second missing person is Tammy Neville, who left her house at 2 in the morning on August 1993 and was never seen again. And let's just say this game has zero respect for these two real victims, going as far as to say they're ghost hunting this place. And there's just something so deeply fucked up and unsettling about exactly that, which makes it so weird and just uncomfortable to talk about. Not only is it obviously disrespectful as hell, but it just hurts a whole lot more because when this game got released, justice wasn't even served yet. The killer of the first victim was found in 2017, and this game could have easily been made at least 3 years before. It doesn't seem modern whatsoever. They couldn't even wait for the case to be closed. This game is so fucked up. But let's talk about something else. Something a little more decent. The first fan game. Finally, the last entry on the iceberg. Let's end it on a high note. Nobody has a clear answer to the question what's the first FNaF fan game of all time, but we have come really close to finding out, especially by the user dwat2501, who made a video about this specific topic. Some people claim it was Treasure Island, but that's not true since there are games that came out earlier. So, let's talk about them. First up is Freddy Fazbear's Pizzeria Massacre, a very trashy shooter game with SFM models released on November 8, 2014. Then there's Five Nights at Freddy's 3D Demo, a very terrible 3D Unity game with, again, SFM models, released on September 26 of 2014. And finally, we have something called Five Nights at McDonald's, released on September 16, just a month and a couple days after Freddy's 1. That is the earliest and possibly the first ever fan game. Yes, it's pretty funny to consider that the first fan game ever conceived was this mess of a thing that wasn't even close to finished, so since this game never got released in full, that leaves us with one more game. And things are really gonna come full circle. In my first Iceberg video, the last entry was about lost media, and now in my second Iceberg video, and maybe my last, we're also gonna end things with lost media. So without further ado, here's the first fully finished, functioning, released Five Nights at Freddy's fan game of all time. Creepypasta Castle.
Hello mates, my name is Risk and welcome to Creepypasta Castle. So, Insane Pink by...
3 videos by the YouTuber Riskrim are literally all the footage we have of this very low quality, tiny fan game about creepypastas. The game was deleted a very long time ago and there's no way to recover it as nobody has ever archived it anywhere. This game will forever live on as a strange piece of history and you will only be able to play it on your dreams. This game is 6, almost 7 years old at this point and it's never resurfaced, and I highly doubt it will. It's kind of a bummer really to think that the first fan game ever finished won't be played again unless a miracle happens. But who knows, maybe in a couple years guys. I surely hope so. And that's it guys, that was my FNaF fan games Iceberg explained. I hope you enjoyed it. No joke, in the amount of time it took me to record and edit this entire video, I got sick like 3 or 4 times, but somehow I made it through, and you did as well. So thanks for staying and thanks for watching. FNaF is still my 4th favorite game of all time, and I hold it so close to my heart, it's incredible. Anyways, see you guys later. I'm improvising this because I'm so tired at this point. Bye bitches, love you all.